Hey y'all, here OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look at the Mayu Mini V4 retro gaming handheld console. And this is a really cute, absolutely tiny console. It might be the smallest one I've ever seen, truly pocket-sized, something you can easily take with you on the road and then just pop out whenever you want to get a few minutes of gaming anywhere you go. So by default, the base model is only priced at around $65 and runs on a Linux-type operating system. It's quite simple, but still gets the job done. However, there's a slightly better operating system called Onion OS that you can install on it instead, or you can pick it up from the links down below. There's a packaged version that gets you a bundled microSD card with the Onion operating system, with some games and ROMs to get you started, which will sell for around $90 when bundled together. You can, of course, install Onion OS yourself, but it's a little bit more of a tedious process, so this just kind of gets you that convenience if you want a pre-configured version of the Mayu Mini. I'll also mention that the Mayu Mini comes in a few different color variants. For example, there's even a transparent blue version, which looks quite cool, or you have a Game Boy inspired white color. We have the yellow version here, in addition to other colorways like this gray in addition to a transparent black. And just for reference, Mayu also sells a Mini Plus, which instead has a larger 3.5-inch screen, making it more comparable to other models from Anbernic. In fact, just to serve as reference, here is the Powkiddy RGB20, and you can tell how this thing is just so much more petite next to it, not to mention the classic Anbernic RG350/351, also having a 3.5-inch screen, and you can just tell how this thing is going to be even easier to slide into pockets, kind of taking with you really anywhere you go. Here's also how it stacks up against kind of an average size smartphone these days, roughly 6.5 inches, so you get the idea. This thing is absolutely adorable in terms of its size. That being said, obviously ergonomics are going to feel a little bit more cramped if you have larger hands or fingers, but it is a slight compromise if you want that ultimate portability. So anyways, a few other accessories that you get aside from just a quick user guide also include a microSD card reader, so you can pop out that card onto your computer to, again, load in maybe other media files or ROMs, as well as a standard USB Type-C charging cable. Now inside here there's a 2000 milliamp hour capacity battery, but because of the smaller 2.8-inch screen, it can last for around 6 to 7 hours of continuous gaming. In fact, it's the same duration as the larger Mayu Mini Plus, which has a 3000 milliamp hour capacity battery, but because the screen drains a bit more power there, it results in, again, the same continuous gaming time overall. Now, underneath the hood, we have a ARM Cortex-A7 1.2 GHz processor, which is the same SoC found on the larger Mini Plus as well. So the components are very similar, that is, except for two differences. The first is the screen resolution. On the smaller Mayu Mini here, is actually higher. It's a 750 by 560 IPS LCD compared to the larger Plus version's 3.5-inch screen is 640 by 480. So this thing has an even higher PPI, making it pretty crisp and sharp. The other difference is the Mini here, V4, doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi, which is built into the Mini Plus. So whether that's a deal breaker or not just depends on whether you are commonly having remote play sessions with other friends, as well as potentially install some OTA updates. Whereas on the Mini 4, you are playing offline and again transferring the games using that SD card. But aside from that, performance as well as processor is going to be the same across the board. And taking a final look at the hardware and design of the Mayu Mini V4 here, we have a pretty conventional D-pad, 4 hotkeys, as well as in the middle there is kind of a multitasking function that allows you to switch back and forth between currently open games at a simple click, which is pretty convenient. It does have auto-save functionality as well, so all of your game states will be saved in terms of your progress when you jump back in. And there's also the standard start and select keys. So it is styled after a kind of Game Boy, but just shrunken down into even smaller dimensions. The bezel size is also quite slim along the top and left and right edges, making it look quite sleek. On the left-hand side, you have access to a dial that you can actually rotate up and down to change the volume in a more granular way. The bottom here houses a standard 3.5mm headphone jack, USB Type-C micro SD card slot, and then finally on the very back, you have access to shoulder keys. You have R1, R2, and also L1, L2, and there is a removable battery cover for the rechargeable 2000 milliamp hour capacity cell. Great for repairability, and there's just a simple status LED and power key at the very top that you can tap once to turn the entire screen on or off. And although the entire console is crafted out of plastic, it actually feels pretty decent in terms of not being too hollow, has a nice density and feeling to it. All of the keys and buttons also feel pretty responsive and satisfying as you're clicking looking down on them, they feel pretty high quality from a construction point of view. Now, again, the Onion OS just unlocks some more customization functions compared to the default one built by Mayu. For example, you can switch between different theme packs more easily with Onion OS. Here's a couple of examples, and it looks really sleek, I have to admit. Just super cool in how they were able to design some of these launchers with their icon packs based on your preferences. Here's a couple more, this one inspired by Pac-Man, for instance. Here's a Simpsons-inspired theme pack as well. Other ones inspired maybe by the PSP launcher, as well as even Game Boy launcher for their icons. It's really just very cute, and you're bound to find something that you like. Other ones here inspired by Nintendo. Even the art style can vary pretty dramatically from one to the other. This one is a bit more reminiscent of iOS and its icons, and I think there's also a few that I saw earlier inspired by Pokemon as well, if that's your jam instead. This one here by Kirby, also just really cute, and aha, this one here by Pokemon with the tiny little houses. Again, just incredibly cute. So you get the idea. I do think Onion OS is just a lot more playful because of these small details with its icon packs and theme packs that you can switch on the fly. And again, around 100 or so are built in with the included micro SD card if you're picking up the version with Onion OS. Just a few more slides here as we reach pretty much to the very front of the list, getting into some more minimalist style launchers as well. So a pretty wide selection all in all. Here's one also by Star Wars, as well as Spider-Man that we saw there. Again, all looking really quite attractive. I also like this one, almost inspired by a Windows or DOS computer. So in this example, I've tapped on the Windows 98 launcher just to see, again, the bezels a little bit more clearly, and it also extends to all the menus as well, so it just looks pretty cohesive. The main home screen carousel includes recent games that we have played, and you can jump back and forth between them, including even a random game function. If you're looking for a mystery box feel, you can also go into your favorites. Any games that you've tabbed will show up in this list, as well as the full list of games. From here, you're able to sort through different consoles. For example, Amiga. You can find some arcade-style games on here as well. Cover art information is displayed here on the right. And yes, there is also the ability for you to search for a specific title just by tapping on the H key, and this will pull up a keyboard that you can then type in to find the specific games that you're interested in. So some other classic consoles here include, again, Atari, in addition to the Game Boy systems, as well as the Genesis. You can even find Nintendo DS games on here, NES, the original PlayStation, in addition to Pico, Wander Swan, Virtual Boy can also be found here. So pretty much all the usual suspects, in addition to, again, arcade and homebrew games, such as Doom, can also be played on here. That said, like most of these retro emulation consoles, it's not really powerful enough to play newer Nintendo 3DS or PS Vita or newer consoles like Nintendo Switch for that matter either, because of the more limited hardware, primarily the processor and GPU inside. Again, the original Nintendo DS as well as the OG PlayStation are pretty much the most advanced graphics that you'll find on a retro console like this. We can also go into applications, so Linux apps you can find include a file manager. There's also a simple video player on here. Just to serve as reference, we can find a couple of MP4 tracks. This one here just taking us through a tutorial of how to really use the console. There's even a simple PDF reader on here, and also Moonlight. This is for game streaming, but because the Mini V4 doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi, it's not quite as applicable here, but again, the software can also be run on the Mayu Mini Plus, which does have Wi-Fi, which probably can leverage that feature better. You can also take a look at a quick user guide, which is installed on the system here for us to move kind of left and right. Final utility functions include a ebook reader or text reader, in addition to an activity tracker, seeing how long you've gamed, as well as RetroArch, and a screen recorder software is also built on in. Then moving into more advanced settings, here's where we can actually adjust the brightness level of the screen to be higher or lower, and I think this is a pretty decent quality panel, all things considered, offering decent enough viewing angles because of the IPS LCD nature. Other properties here, including the luminance, hue, saturation, and contrast, can all be adjusted. So those are the main features. Overall, pretty easy to navigate. So now moving to some quick examples of sample gameplay, starting with a couple of classics, including Pokemon here. This is using a ROM from Game Boy Advance, and as you can tell here, everything is still playing at 100% speed, pretty responsive. All the buttons, again, feel quite high quality in terms of their clickiness. In my personal experience, I still found it to be good enough for at least an hour or two of gaming without feeling too stressed or strained. Overall, it's more than usable enough. And also, you can fast forward through gameplay on this particular console by tapping on the shoulder key here on the side. So if you're looking through dialogue and you want to just more quickly pass through, you can speed it up and jumping more quickly into the action as a result. And now moving into a PlayStation game, this is going to be Crash Bandicoot warped. So this, in addition to the Nintendo 64 games, might be representative of slightly more advanced graphics, but because these consoles are more designed to be played on a TV, some of the icons may seem a little bit more cramped because it is, again, a smaller 2.8-inch screen. It's not bad, all things considered. Particularly from a responsiveness point of view, the processor in here is still more than sufficient for keeping up with these games at pretty much the maximum 100% speed without really any sluggishness. So as long as you're okay with, again, a slightly smaller screen, I think you'll still be perfectly content here, remaining a pretty fun experience overall. A couple of other footnotes. Again, the D-pad is pretty responsive. Even as you are rapidly moving around, you can see how it responds pretty quickly as I'm pressing maybe 2 keys at the same time. Now switching into another Pokemon-inspired theme instead, with its monochrome black and yellow, also looking quite cool. Let's jump into some Super NES game demos as well. For instance, here is Super Mario Land. Once again, everything here is pretty much loading at maximum 100% frame rate. Nothing feels too slow or sluggish, remaining an enjoyable enough experience here as well. Also, I have to admit that this yellow version almost reminds me of something like a Playdate. From a color scheme perspective, it does look quite fresh. So you get the idea. Despite the smaller size, no real problems here from a playability perspective. All of the consoles that it's able to emulate can play back at, overall, a pretty smooth FPS. The console does have haptic vibration motor inside as well, so it will buzz in certain games, providing you with a little bit more of a tactile sensation, and also when you're multitasking between other open games, it will also vibrate once as well, as kind of a confirmation. Now, like many of the other consoles with only one screen, I would say emulating Nintendo DS titles, although it's capable enough to play them back from a graphic and processing point of view, may be a little bit more hit or miss, because again, the original DS has 2 screens instead of only 1 panel here, so you end up with a bit more of a cramped experience, and again, it's not a touchscreen, obviously, on this unit, like the original Nintendo DS's second display. Depending on the specific ROM, if it needs to use the touchscreen or not, the playability experience will also vary on this particular system that it's trying to imitate. I wouldn't say the situation is necessarily unique to the Mayu Mini, since many of the other consoles as well, we've talked about this in the past, but perhaps on this one, you are further constrained by an even smaller screen. So again, some of those icons in that second screen will definitely look a little bit small, but here's one example of kind of Super Mario Kart, which at the very least is still playable when it comes to a responsiveness point of view, as you can tell there, as long as you're okay with, again, just being a little bit more restrained when it comes to the screen's surface area, but surprisingly not bad, all things considered. We're also able to, again, jump back and forth between different map views here as well, and kind of impressive, I guess, in a way that it is playing so well on something so tiny. So jumping back now into the main screen, let's go into some final examples, looking at some custom ports here, so you are able to still kind of move around, navigate, and get a decent enough experience as you are playing it back. Also, Doom and Quake are examples of games which do use a haptic vibration motor, so it slightly buzzes whenever you get shot, for example, in this particular shooter-style game. So there we have it. That's been just a quick look at the Mayu Mini. This is the V4 4th generation version, and I have to say that this is one of the most fun retro gaming handheld consoles that I've ever tested, just because of how compact this thing is. Super tiny, but still more than powerful enough for playing back all the systems that it touts at pretty much 100% speed without really dropping too many frames. It really is super cute, and the Onion OS experience just makes it even more customizable and a true pocket-sized console, I would say. Designed for kind of quick gaming sessions. Again, when you're in between things, just quickly taking it out, playing something, and then popping it back into your pocket, compared to kind of an at-home console that maybe has, again, larger screens. So there we have it. That's more or less it for the Mayu Mini Plus V4. You can check out more details if you're interested in the links down below. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.